compared to £409 million in December. The size of the trade gap surprised the city, who'd been expecting a deficit of around £450 million. And the economic gloom was reflected in results from the chemical giant ICI, which reported a 10% drop in pre-tax profits. Our industrial correspondent Ian Ross reports on how British exporters are feeling the pinch.
As measured by today's figures, the government's boat is some way from coming in, with exports last month falling much more sharply than imports, particularly exports to other common market countries, and visible trade in deficit to the tune of more than £1,000 million. There's little indication of that export-led recovery. There is, however, an important caveat. 1 month's figures can be misleading.
We had a very good set of figures in December and a slightly more disappointing set in January. And what I said in December was the balance payments monthly figures are a very erratic series, and it's very dangerous to look at 1 month at a time. We were right not to get overexcited about December, and I think we should get over-depressed about January. If you look at the last few months as a whole, you find that the balance payments deficit's been running at about £600 million a month fairly consistently now for a few months, and I think that these figures are consistent with that.
What these figures show is that the government have misled us completely about the scope and the extent of the recession. When you have output, investment and employment still falling, business bankruptcies and bad debts rising, and now you have a current account trade deficit that is actually widening during a recession, then the demand for action on the economy is urgent, on investment, on employment and on training.
And this is the moment when you would expect, if the government is right, that our imports bill will be falling sharply and our export bill will be beginning to build up as we are pulling out of an export-led recovery. But that is certainly not the case. I think this underlines the gloom that now hangs over the economy and underlines the government's disgraceful paralysis in the face of a recession which is now clearly staying where it is, if not getting deeper.
Between the 10th of March, when the Chancellor will reveal the contents of his budget box, and the likely election date in early April, the economic gloom will almost certainly not lighten very much. Of the half a dozen or so key economic indicators to be published in March, all but two, producer prices on budget day and inflation on the 20th, are likely to be unhelpful to the government by offering little evidence of recovery. At Prime Minister's questions this afternoon, the opposition leader focused on what he saw as a contradiction in what the government might do in the budget.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister recall saying, and I quote him, "A promise to cut taxes and increase public expenditure is dishonest and absurd"? When he wrote that, did he think that he was going to end up making exactly that dishonest and absurd promise himself?
Quite staggering to everyone who listens to the right honourable gentleman how terrified he and his party are of tax cuts. He still thinks they're immoral. They have opposed every tax cut we've introduced, and they now threaten to raise taxes if we cut them. He wants people to let him spend their money rather than do so themselves. They oppose tax cuts when the economy is growing, and they oppose tax cuts when it's not.
12 months ago, I said it could be another difficult year, and so it turned out to be.
Sir Dennis Henderson reporting ICI's disappointing results for 1991, a 10% drop in pre-tax profits, and telling journalists that signs of recovery are so faint as to be almost invisible. But lower inflation plus lower interest rates should eventually, he said, encourage a pick-up in consumer and business confidence.
And that really is all about, I believe, consumer expenditure. I think it will start from there. It would, of course, be perhaps improved if there were a real export-led boom, but we don't see that, although in some places it's really quite good. And also, I think some public sector investment expansion would help as well.
And a boost from the budget.
I think perhaps some indexing of allowances, perhaps some reduction in income tax, some extra public sector expenditure, perhaps some improved treatment of depreciation for investment in manufacturing. It's a wide range of things, and I don't think I should care to have the Chancellor's choice as to where precisely he will place his eggs.
I see